Conditionals are a very important part of any programming language, and if else is the typical construct that most programming languages support. So let us see how do we use if else or conditionals in JavaScript. Let's write a simple code using if. So let me say let x is equal to 8. So I've defined a number x and given it a value 8. And now depending upon the value of x, I want to print whether x is large or x is small. So let's say if x is say greater than equal to 10, then I want to say console.log x is large. Let me run this code, and as we can see, nothing has been printed on the console. So let's understand this code. So here we have said if, and then we have put in a condition. So here is a condition, and what is the condition here? X greater than equal to 10. So what's the value of x? It is 8. So obviously this condition is false, and if this condition is false, then this what we refer to as the if block will not get executed. So in this case, nothing is the output. Let me change the value of x and let's say make it 18. And now when I run it, what do I get? X is large. So why is that? Because when x is 18, let's evaluate the condition. Is it true? Is it false? It is true because x is greater than equal to 10, 18 is greater than equal to 10, and hence it goes into the if block and prints x is large. Suppose I write another if condition here. If x is less than 10, console.log x is small. So now let me run it, and it prints x is large. For the earlier case, let's say when we have the value 8, let me run it, and what do we get? We get x is small. So now here we have two if blocks. So after that we have put in this another if x is less than 10. So when the value is 8, this condition is true, which is why we get x is small. We could have also modified values of x here. So I can also say if x is large, and let's say if x is large, I want to double its value. So I'll say x is equal to x into 2 and double the value. So that's the comment I've put in. And if x is small, let's say we want to subtract 5 from it. So we can say x is equal to x minus 5. So subtract 5. And we can also put in console.log x. Now let me run this code. So x is equal to 8. Now if x is 8, will this condition be true? X greater than equal to 10? No, it is false. So it does not go into this block. Let's come to the next if. If x is less than 10. Now is this condition true? 8 is less than 10. Yes, it's true. So it goes in here and it prints x is small, and the value of x has now become x minus 5, which is 8 minus 5, so 3. So now when I print it on the console, I get 3. Let me change the value to the earlier one, 18, and run the code. So what is the output? When x is 18, this condition becomes true, x greater than equal to 10. So x is large is printed on the screen, and the value of x becomes 36. Now with that value of 36, when we come here, what do we see? X less than 10? No, that condition is false. So it does not go into the if block, and at the end of it, it prints 36. So this is how we have used the if statement here. Now there is another construct in JavaScript and in most programming languages that is known as else. So we could have also said else here, because what were we checking? that if this condition is false, then we would want it. So else means that if this condition is true, this block will get executed, which is the if block, and if this condition is false, then this block will get executed. So let's run this code. So in this case, x is equal to 18, so the if condition is true, and hence what we refer to as the if block will get executed and the else block will not get executed. Let me change the value to 8. Now in this case, the condition is false, and because the condition is false, the else block will get executed, and as we can see, we get the output x is small and the value of x has become 3. Let us write a code which checks whether a number is positive, 0 or negative. So let us say let num is equal to say 6. So we want to check the value of this num, and depending upon whether it's positive, it is 0 or it is negative, we want to print that on the console. So let's say if num is greater than 0, then what do I want to do? Console.log positive. Now if I put an else here and say console.log negative, now will this work? Let's run it. So for 6 it is fine because it prints positive. Let's give it a negative number, say -5. It gives us negative. Let's put in 0 as a test case. For 0 it gives us negative, which is wrong. So we need to solve that case also. So there are two ways we can do it. So either we can say within this else and put a condition here. Else if num is equal to 0. So if the value of num is 0, so if this condition is false, then in this else it goes into this if and checks if num is equal to 0. What should I say? Console.log 0. And now if this condition was also false, it can go into this else and print negative. So now if I run it for 0, I get 0. So this is the if. If this condition is not true, it will go into this else if, it will check this condition. If this condition is also not true, it will go ahead and check this condition. Let's test it for the other values. So we gave it a value 6, it prints positive, and for a value say -5, it prints negative. So this is how we use if and else. Let us solve a few problems using if else. Given a number n, if n is odd, add 1 to it and then print the number on the console. So we have been given some test cases. So for example, if n is 11, because 11 is odd, so it should become 12 and that is the output on the console. If n is 6, n is even, so the output is 6. If n is 30, the output is 30. If n is 1, because it is odd, we add 1 to it and hence 2 is the output. Let us write the code. So let me first declare a variable say n and give it the value say 11. Let me declare let remainder is equal to n percentage 2. So that's the remainder when we divide n by 2. Now we can say if remainder is equal to 1. So if the number is odd, it means remainder is equal to 1. Then we can say n is equal to n plus 1. So we have incremented n, or an easier way or a shorter way to write it is n plus plus. So this is same as n is equal to n plus 1. It's a shorter way to write it. And now I can print console.log n. Let's run this code and we get 12 as the output. Let's check it for the other test cases. So let me give it 30. Let me give it 2. Let me give it say 1. And we get an output of 2, which is fine. So we should check our code for multiple test cases that we should construct for it. So this is working fine. Let's look at the next problem. Given a number num, check for its divisibility by 2, 3 and 6 to generate the output as shown below. So when num is 18, what should be printed on the console? Divisible by 6. So 18 is divisible by 6, yes. So we have printed divisible by 6. When num is 21, we are printing divisible by 3. 21 is not divisible by 6, so we are checking it by 3. Yes, it is divisible by 3. We are printing divisible by 3. When it's 11, we are saying not divisible by 2 or 3. 11 is neither divisible by 2 nor 3. Num is equal to 4, we'll say divisible by 2. Num is equal to 60, we are saying divisible by 6. So what are we doing here? We are first checking by 6. So if the number is divisible by 6, we will print divisible by 6. If it is not divisible by 6 but it is divisible by 3, we will print divisible by 3. If it is then divisible by 2, we will print it is divisible by 2. Otherwise, we would say not divisible by 2 or 3. Let us see how do we code this problem. So let's say let num is equal to 60. Now what do I want to do? So I would say if num percentage 6 is equal to 0. So I should start with 6 in my checking or 2 or 3. So if you understand the problem, if it is divisible by 6, I should say it is divisible by 6. So 60 we can see is divisible by 2, will be divisible by 3 and will be divisible by 6. So for 60 I want to print divisible by 6. So I should first check divisibility by 6. Then I will check divisibility by 3, then divisibility by 2. So let's start. If num percentage 6 is equal to 0, which means num is divisible by 6. So I would say console dot log divisible by 6. Now, should I put if or else if? I should put an else if because if it is divisible by 6, I don't want to check it for others because it will give me more output. I only want to say divisible by 6. So I've said else if num percentage 3 is equal to 0. So if it was not divisible by 6, now I'm checking whether it's divisible by 3. If it is divisible by 3, then I will say console.log divisible by 3. Else if num percentage 2 is equal to 0, then console.log divisible by 2. And if none of these conditions is true, else, which means it is not divisible by 2, 3 and 6. So this is how I should do it. Let's run this code. So for 60, it gives us divisible by 6. Let me put another number, say 21, divisible by 3. Let's put in another number that we check for, say 11, not divisible by 2, 3 and 6. So because it's not divisible, let's put in another number, say 4, divisible by 2, perfect. Let's put in 18, divisible by 6. So in this problem, we have put the conditions in a certain order because that is how we wanted printed our output. Let's look at the next problem. Given size, create the string as shown below and print it on the console. So we have been given a variable size, and depending upon its value, we are creating the string. So when size is 6, we are creating the string jk, jk, jk. Size is 3, jkj. Size 1, j. Size 8, jk, 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 jk. So the pattern is fairly clear. So first I put a j, then a k, then a j, then a k, and so on for size number of times. So let us see how do we solve this problem. So let me say let size is equal to 6. Now because I want to create a string of that length, so I should create a for loop. So let me say for let I is equal to 1, I less than equal to 6. I want to run it not 6 but size, I should say. So size number of times. Here the value of size is 6. So size I plus plus. So depending upon the value of size, those many times I want the loop to run. Now notice what do we need to do. So we need to first put a j, then a k, then a j, then a k. So that means when I is 1, I need to put a j. When I is 2, I will add a k to it. When I is 3, I will again add a j. When I is 4, I will add a k. So what does it mean? When I is odd, I will add a j to the string. When I is even, I will add a k. So let us code that. So let me first declare a string, an empty string, where we will make this pattern. If I percentage 2 is equal to 1. So which means I is odd, I percentage 2 means remainder with 2. If it is equal to 1, what do we need to add to the string? J, str plus j. Else, what do we need to add to the string? Str is equal to str plus k. And now after the loop, I will just print it as console.log str. Now let me run this code, and I get the value when size is 6, jk, jk, jk. Let's run it for another value, say 3, jkj. Let's run it for 1. We should check it for all the test cases. J, when size is 8, I get jk, 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 jk. Now suppose we wanted to not print it once, but as the string is getting formed, if I want to print it every time, I could have, instead of putting my console.log add after the for loop, which means only one print is happening. If I print my console.log here, console, then for every time in the loop it will print it, and I can see the string getting formed. So let me run it, and as we expected, we see it. It is getting printed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The number of times the loop is running. Let's look at another problem. Given n, check whether n is prime or composite. So we have to check whether the number n is prime or composite. So 21, it's a composite number. It is divisible by 3 and 7. So prime number is a number that is not divisible by any number except 1 and itself. 17 is a prime number. 1 is neither prime nor composite. So we need to print in the case of 1 is neither prime nor composite. 25 is divisible by 5, so it's composite. 2 is a prime number. So let us see how do we code this prime problem. So let's say let n is equal to, and the number was 21. So how do we check whether a number is prime? So as we said, prime means it is only divisible by 1 and itself. So what does that mean? That between 2 and itself, which is n minus 1, less than 1 minus itself, there should be no factor. So if we count the number of factors or the number of which numbers are dividing n, then we should get it. So for a prime number, that count should be 0. So the number of factors between 2 and n minus 1 should be 0. So let's count that. How do we count it? We will put a for loop. Let's first put a counter. Let count is equal to 0, where we will count the number of factors. And now let's put a for loop. Where should the for loop start from? We want to start from 2, and it should be less than equal to n minus 1. So we are going to less than equal to n minus 1, or we could have said less than n I plus plus. So less than n means we are checking till n minus 1. Now we need to check. So we are generating all the numbers 2, 3, 4 till n minus 1. We need to check whether this I divides n. So we can say if n percentage I, so the remainder when n is divided by I is equal to 0, this would mean that I divides n, then we can say count plus plus. So we increment the value of count. So like we said earlier, count plus plus means is a short form of saying count is equal to count plus 1. So it's a short form of saying this, and we do nothing. So now at the end of the for loop, in count we would have the number of factors other than 1 and n that divide the number n. Now we know for prime number this should be 0. So we can say if count is equal to 0, console.log prime, else console.log composite. So if count is 0, that means it had no factor, we couldn't find any factor, so prime, otherwise we found a factor, so hence composite. Let's run this code, and 21 is composite, we get the right output. Let's check it for the next test case. 17 prime, perfect. Let's check it for the next test case. 1 prime. So for 1 we are getting an error because 1, obviously the for loop would not run. Less than n means, so count will remain 0, but 1 is a special case, so let us go and handle it. So within the count is equal to 0, let us say if n is equal to 1. So if as n is 1, then console.log 1 is neither prime nor composite, and else console.log prime. So we have put this condition in that if n is 1, then we will print this, otherwise we will say console.log prime. Let's run this code. 1 is neither prime nor composite, perfect. Now before we check for the other test cases, we should check whether our previous are working or not. So let's start. 21 composite, 17 prime. We tested for 1, let's test it for another test case. So 25 composite, 2 prime. So our code is working fine for all our test cases.